Okay, today's daf is Shabbat daf Yudchet. Today's daf is dedicated by Leah Brick for the yurtzeit of her father-in-law, Mari Brick, Mordechai ben Chaim Yosef Gershon, Zichrono Lebracha, and sponsored by Jonathan, Kenny, and Danny Sadanoff in memory of Frank Sadanoff, their father, Ephraim Mordechai ben Menachem Mendel, Zichrono Lebracha, and for Refuah Shlema for Pesach Yoshua ben Tovachai. Okay, we're starting today. If you have the sheet, look at the sheet. It'll help organize. We're going to go back and just quickly review the Mishnah that we started yesterday, which in the words of the Gemara is the Mishnah about Shvitat Kelim, but we're going to realize it's not exactly 100% about Shvitat Kelim, because what is Shvitat Kelim? This is, we talked yesterday, that not only do your children and your animals need to rest, but also, and your servants, but also your utensils need to rest according to Beit Shammai. According to Beit Hillel, although we'll see it's a subject of debate, there's no issue of Shvitat Kelim. Your utensils do not need to rest. Okay, what's the relevance? So we had a whole list of things. You can look up in the sheet if you want. At the top of the sheet, I reviewed the cases in the Mishnah. You can't put Geo and Sammanim or Karshinim into water because these will start to get thicker. They'll thicken, kind of like a dough thickens. You can't put these onim of pishtan, these flax, flax into an oven because in order to start whitening it, because it goes in the oven and has to be ready from before Shabbat. Not that semer to the yored, to put the dye into the wool. You can't put that into the pot of dye. Okay, we're going to see whether this is actually on the flame or not on the flame. The issue is coloring, although we'll see that maybe some people think the issue is cooking, or maybe it's not really cooking, it's coloring, but maybe there's something of cooking related to this. You can't put out traps for animals, because to trap an animal is one of the malachot. You can't put, you can't sell to a non-Jew, or help him load up something on his donkey, or help him with something like that until he gets to, unless he's going to get to the nearby town. Because if you do, basically people will think this is a bit of a different issue. It's not Shvitat Kelim. It's that people will think that it's yours and that you're actually, it's the non-Jew is doing work for you, and we don't want people to think that. So that's an issue. You can't give orot la'abdan, the tanner, to tan, or you can't, like this is about bringing things to a laundromat. Okay, like right before Shabbat, you can't bring something to a laundromat, according to Beit Shammai, because they're going to end up doing your laundry on Shabbat. Okay. So again, the Mishnah says, and this is where we ended, Ela kadesh yasumi ba'od yom. It has to be that they have enough time to do it before Shabbat comes in. Ubekulan Beit Hillel matirim im hashemesh, right? But all these things Beit Hillel say, as long as you did it before Shabbat, you're finished with what you've done, all is good. Before we move on in the Mishnah, I just want to read the Tosefta inside, because it's a very important Tosefta, and it also raises another thing that we didn't talk about yesterday. I made reference to the Tosefta yesterday. I put it on the sheet, so if you have the sheet, you can look inside. So it's Perek Aleph, Halacha Kaf Aleph in the Tosefta in Shabbat. Here we have a discussion between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. Amru lahem Beit Hillel. So Beit Hillel says to Beit Shammai, Iatem modim, don't you agree? Shetoanim korot Beit Habad, Vitolin igulei habat erev Shabbat im chashecha. This is going to appear at the end of our Mishnah, which is what? In the Beit Habad, or right, this is the olive press and the wine press. What would they do? They would squeeze out the liquid, right? They would, I don't know if you ever made olives. I did it once. It was too much work for me. But you have to break all the olives first, right? So then a little juice starts coming out, and then you press them. So they would leave them to be pressed underneath a big beam. There was a beam that they would put on top. And then all the juice would slowly, slowly drip out. Now, they both agree that doing that is actually allowed. Why is it allowed? So we're going to see in Daf Yutet why exactly that's allowed. Right now, it doesn't really interest me why. The fact is that there's something that they both agree about, okay, which is interesting, because you'd think Shvitat Kelim, so Shvitat Kelim is across the board. But what we're going to see is that there were some issues that were agreed upon by everybody that this is fine. We'll get back to that in one more minute. So Beit Hillel says, well, don't you agree with me about this case? That Erev Shabbat and Chashecha, you could put this on and it can continue to go throughout Shabbat. So if that's the case, he says, Af Dio, some manim v'karshinin kayotze behen. So then if you agree about that, then you should agree about all these other cases. Elu amdu b'tshuvatam ve'elu amdu b'tshuvatam. Well, Beit Hillel's argument didn't help. Beit Hillel stuck with their shita and Beit Shammai stuck with their shita. So now, what was Beit Shammai's reason? And we saw this yesterday. I'll show you inside now. You have to do all your work. Your work has to be finished before Shabbat. So you can't leave anything to go over Shabbat. Everything has to be finished. The focus is on the individual. You should work 6 days, and then on Shabbat you don't work. So the focus is on you should work, meaning you can't work on Shabbat, but if something else works, that's not a problem. So now why is this important? Well, in this book, Mishnat Eretz Yisrael, that I've mentioned before, I can now show you. Okay, here's the book. It's a very good book. I have a series on a lot of the Mishnayot. Okay, it's not on everything yet, but it's out on a lot of Masechtot. So it was put together of materials of Safrai, Shmuel and Zev Safrai. So in their book, what they claim is that you can see, he proves it from this Tosefta. He says that what you can see is that there were already different masorot. In other words, there were things that everybody agreed upon. Okay, so he says whether there were machlokot about, let's say, the Gat or the Beit Habad beforehand or not, it's not clear. But it's clear that by the time of Shammai and Hillel, everybody was in agreement about this. So now, why is that relevant? Because he says that Yitachen shachlatot lo hayu achidot ela hem pri mishutav shabale yishot shonot. He says it's not, or I'll read the first line before that. Ein bitachon shekol halachot hakdumot nikbeu lefi oto ikaron hilchati. It's not clear that what was agreed upon by everybody. This is a very interesting way about how halacha develops. Everyone agreed about the following things. Now, our Gemara is going to try to make assumptions and say, just like Beit Hillel said, well, if you agree about that, you should agree about this. But it's not always, even though we're constantly dealing with why is this way and why is that way and questioning. That's what the Gemara does. But before the time of the Gemara, it's not so clear that that's how things work. It's not so clear that everybody was 100% consistent within their approach. And that it could be that there were certain things that for whatever reason, and then the question becomes, why? Okay, and then we have to ask that question. Why was it so agreed upon about those things, but not other things, right? Why did everyone agree about the Beit Habad and the Gat? I don't know. But it was agreed upon, what he claims is, and then what happened? Well, then they each had their approach, and even if it didn't fit 100% with everything, there were certain things that kind of just, and I think a lot of us go in halacha and even the poskim through intuition. Intuitively, they thought that that was okay, whereas other things weren't. But it's not necessarily always consistent within their approaches. And it could be that Beit Shammai theoretically didn't really agree with the Gat and the Beit Habad, but it was the common practice and everybody did it and they just let it, right? So they agreed about it, but not because they agreed about it really theoretically for their reasoning, okay, for their approach. So that's why he says it could be that these aren't achidot, they're not all the same. They're primishutav shabale yishot shonot. It could be that the way things develop was some sort of combination and mixture. And this is very important to read in light of this page that we're going to learn right now, because the daf that we're going to learn is going to basically take different approaches in the Tannaitic time period and try to say, or different sources like a Braita, and say, well, we're confused because this seems to match Beit Shammai, although it seems to match Beit Hillel. Is it Beit Shammai? Is it Beit Hillel? So again, the approach of the Gemara is to try to say, this is all Beit Shammai, or this is all Beit Hillel, and then have to deal with the exceptions and come up with sometimes not such convincing answers as to why this would be that way and this would be that way. You know, why, if Beit Shammai says it's all forbidden, but yet he matirs this, or the reverse. So I'm saying this in light of our daf, because our daf is going to try to bring everything together, and what Safrai is saying is, sometimes there's a mix here, and sometimes Beit Shammai might have matired something, even though maybe there's no convincing reason for it, okay? So with that, let's continue on. The Mishnah says, Amar Rabbanit Michelle ben Gamliel, Nohagim hayu beit Abba, shayu notnim kli lavan lechoves nochri shlosha yamim kodem l'Shabbat. Okay, Rabbanit Michelle ben Gamliel says, in the house of my father, they used to bring white clothing to the launderer 3 days before Shabbat. Now, what's the difference between white laundry? Because the white laundry would take longer to clean, and therefore they would make sure to bring it 3 days before so we had enough time so that he wouldn't be doing it on Shabbat. Vishavin elu ve'elu, they both agree, this is what we saw in the Tosefta, shetoanim korat beit habad ve'igulei hagat. So we could put the beam onto the olives or the grapes on Shabbat, like Erev Shabbat, before Shabbat, and leave it throughout Shabbat. We'll get to it on Daf Yutet, why this is an exception. Okay, the first thing the Gemara does is just going to be a little different than everything else we're going to do today, which is deal with the issue of lash. We talked about lash in the first case, that you could put the dio or the samamanim or the karshinim, the vetch, into the water and let it soak. And even though it's going to be lash, and it's going to be kneaded, right? Kneaded with a K. You're allowed to do it, even though, right, as long as you do it before Shabbat, and according to Beit Shammai, you can't do it because it's going to end up, you're going to be over on lash, over Shabbat. So now they're asking the side question about the malacha of lash. Who's to say that putting water onto this dried up ink is lash? Isn't lash normally when you knead with your fingers or with a mix master, right, or with some sort of utensil? That's lash, not just putting water into something. You're not over on lash. So which Tana holds that this would be lash also? Rav Yosef Rebbe. It must be the sheet of Rebbe. Tanya, here we quote the Braita with the machloket between Rebbe and Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Echad notenet hakemach ve'echad notenet hamayim. If you put flour into a bowl and I put water on that flour, as soon as I put the water, acharon chayav, I'm chayav for just putting water into dough. So that would match our Mishnah, that by putting the water onto the dough, that's enough to be chayav in the malacha of lash. That's divrei Rebbe. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, it just says Rabbi Yossi, but it should be Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Eino chayav ad sheyikabel. Until you actually need it, you're not going to be responsible. You're not going to be obligated. So now we say, so Rabbi Yosef says, our Mishnah must only be according to Rebbe in terms of the issue of lash, because according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, you wouldn't be chayav just for putting the water onto the ink. So Amar le Abaye, Abaye says, wait a minute, you're comparing two things that are not actually the same. Maybe that's the case with flour, because flour needs to be kneaded. But dio, even if it wasn't Shabbat, what would you do? You put the water onto the ink and it would eventually thicken on its own. You don't generally knead it. So maybe Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda would agree in this case that you're actually obligated. So the Gemara now says, Lo sal kadatach. No, this doesn't, I don't think this is right. Why? Titania, because we're going to see that they actually have a machloket even in a case where something is lav bar gibel. Okay, again, there's things that need kneading and there's things that don't need to be kneaded. So now we're going to have a case. The assumption is the geo doesn't need to be kneaded. And we think that maybe Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda would agree in that case, but we're going to bring a Braita now where it shows that even in a case where something doesn't need to be kneaded, still Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says you're only obligated for lash, kneading, if you actually need it. So here goes the Braita. Okay. Ditanya. Echad notenet ha'efer, ve'echad notenet hamayim, ha'acharon chayav. If you put ashes into water, now, if you put ashes into water, what will happen? Eventually the water will thicken, but do you need it? No, it's not something that would require kneading. So that's why we're going to say this is just like the ink case. Echad and the vetch and the other cases. Echad notenet ha'efer, ve'echad notenet hamayim, ha'acharon chayav divrei Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad sheyikabel. So again, we see they have the exact same debate here. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute. You're assuming this is afer, ashes, and ashes in water don't need gibel, and there we said that would go against Abaye. But they say, no, Dilma my afer afal, dibar gibelhu. No, maybe it's not ashes, maybe it's dirt, and right, afar. Now, afer and afar are similar in the fact that they have same letters other than an aleph or an ayin. Now, we've seen before in the Gemara that sometimes aleph and ayin get confused. So they say maybe that Braita meant, when it said afer, it really didn't mean afer, it meant afar. Oh, I'm sorry, it didn't, right, it meant afar with an ayin. Now, afar is bar gibel. Okay, I was thinking, where would be afar be bar gibel? And like when you make pottery, like clay or something, right, you would need it. So I assume that's what they're referencing. So they say, oh, maybe that is afar dibar gibelhu, which is something that one would need. In which case, again, we can go back to Abaye, that the machloket between Rebbe and Rabbi Yossi is only if it's something that can be needed. Therefore, in our Mishnah, even Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda would agree, since nobody needs the geo, the ink, or the batch. So then they say, wait, how can you say that afar is that Afer is afar. Bahatanya Afer, Bahatanya afar. There's sources that refer to Afer as Afer, and they refer to afar as afar. So meaning, there's obviously a difference between these two words, and some are used this way and some are used that way, which means they're obviously the author, that Braita, didn't mean afar. If he meant afar, he would have written afar with an I. So the Gemara rejects that and says, no, miti gabe hadade tanya, you can't prove something from one Braita using a different Braita, because the author of that Braita was not the same author of that Braita. So the fact that one person used afar specifically when they meant afar doesn't mean that the person who wrote this Braita, maybe he used Afer and really meant afar, in which case we're left with really our Mishnah. We have two approaches. Rabbi Yosef said the Mishnah is only Rebbe, and Abaye said, no, the Mishnah actually matches both approaches. Okay, that was something different than everything we're doing today, although it's similar in the sense that we're trying to figure out which Tanaitic opinion matches our Mishnah. And like I said, we're going to deal with today which Tanaitic opinion is mentioned in the following Braita that we're going to do. But this had really nothing to do with the Machloka Beit Shammai Beit Hillel. It was an aside that had to do with the Malacha of Lash. Now we're going to go back to what we call Shvitat Kelim, or maybe call it something else, because Shvitat Kelim is not necessarily the only term used here, because not everything involves a kli, a utensil. Tanu Rabbanan, it says in the Braita, Potkin Mayim Legina Erev Shabbat Im Chashecha Umitmalet V'Holechet Kol Hayom Kulo. Okay, how did they irrigate their fields? They would take a stream and they would kind of build some sort of channel to channel the water into their field. So you can put this channel up right before Shabbat and let it water your fields and irrigate it all throughout Shabbat. Umanichim, by the way, so far this sounds like Beit Hillel, because Beit Hillel is allowing you to do something before Shabbat, which is going to allow you throughout Shabbat to continue to do malacha, right? The malacha is going to happen, watering your field throughout Shabbat. Next case. Menichim mugmar tachad hakilim. We saw this mugmar. This was something they would bring at the end of the meal in Birkat Hamazon, if you remember. The person who brings the mugmar, there was something about him. So anyway, the mugmar was brought, it was an incense that was used to make their clothes smell nice. Okay, they didn't have, detergent that had nice smells to it that we use now, cleaning stuff. So what would they do? They would put this, they would kind of smoke it. Okay, they would put up an incense, hang it, I guess, by the clothesline, and it would make the clothes smell nice. So you could put that under the clothes, Erev Shabbat, and then throughout Shabbat, it will go and it will make the clothes smell nice. You could put sulfur, okay? Again, this is smoking with sulfur under kelim. Now, what kind of kelim? Rashi explains they were silver utensils with engravings. Now, the engravings weren't so noticeable if the engravings were in silver on silver, so they want to blacken them. So they would use sulfur to blacken it, like they would smoke sulfur. It would blacken the kli. Then they would clean the kli off from the outside, and wherever it was etched in, it would end up being colored more in black, and then it would show up. So you could do this, put it under the kli, and it continue to go throughout Shabbat. Okay, what was I thinking? This is like when you take a Band-Aid and you put Neosporin on, or some antibiotic cream, and you put it on just before Shabbat. Now what's going to happen? Well, the cream is going to go and do its thing throughout Shabbat. So you can do this kind of thing. One was some substance they would put in the eye, and as time went on, it worked on healing. Okay, you can put that on before Shabbat, and then it'll continue to work throughout Shabbat. Okay, so far this sounds very much like Beit Hillel, and it would be pretty obvious that's what this is. In Beit Shammai, we disagree about all these things. Ava, here comes the tricky part of the Braita. If you have a mortar and pestle that works based on water, okay, like a water mill, so you can't do that. A millstone that's operated by water. You can't do that. It all has to be done from before Shabbat. Okay? Now, the big question is why? Okay, we're going to see three different interpretations of this Braita. So what I did is here, there's a back and forth. So on the sheet, I kind of went through first question and then questions on that, second question, questions and answers on that, third one, and then at the end there's a sikum, okay, a summary of the three shitot, so you can see it charted out. Okay, so the first approach is going to say, Amarava Rabba Mipnei Shemashmat Kol. What's the issue here? The issue is that it creates a noise. This is what I mentioned yesterday about dishwashers and washing machines. They make a lot of noise. So because they make noise, we don't allow it. So theoretically, what do we have? This is Beit Hillel. Everything's allowed. However, if it makes a noise, it's not allowed. Why is it not allowed if it makes a noise? So Rashi says the issue is Av Shamilta. Av Shamilta means people will hear about it. And what will happen, right? He says, the ikaziluta. It's like a disgrace to Shabbat. It kind of ruins the spirit of Shabbat, the way we would say. It's not appropriate to have things going with noise. Some people explain it's more a problem that someone will see your millstone working on Shabbat and think that you set it up to work on Shabbat. It's like a Marit Ayin problem. Okay, it's not exactly clear what the issue is with Hashmat Kol, but it seems to be an issue because it makes noise. That's one approach. Amar of Yosef, B'lei Mamar, Mishum Shvitat Kelim. Why don't you just say it's because of Shvitat Kelim, that your Kelim have to rest? Titania, Ubechol asher amarti alechem tishmeru lerabot Shvitat Kelim. And he quotes a pasuk, and he says, this pasuk, it's in Shmot Kaf Gimel, pasuk Gimel, right? It says, in everything I told you about Shabbat, it's in reference to Shabbat, Tishameru, right? Tishameru. Okay, why does it say in everything I told you Tishameru? It must be it's coming to include something new that we didn't mention before. What must it be including? They say, this adds that even your Kalim can't work on Shabbat. And then this would be, then we'd say this is all based on Beit Shammai, who holds by Shvitat Kelim. So now, Ela Amar Rav Yosef Mishum Shvitat Kelim. Okay, so the first approach is to say that Rav Yosef is actually saying that even Beit Hillel agrees that Shvitat Kelim is forbidden. But then the Gemara questions it, says, wait, now if you're going to say that Beit Hillel holds that there's Shvitat Kelim d'oraita, in other words, the assumption is that right now he thinks that Beit Hillel says that there's an issue of Shvitat Kelim. Well, if that's the case, Gofrit umugmar. By the way, I say I have a mistake on my sheet. On the Sikum, it should be in Rav Yosef. It should be Beit Hillel, not Beit Shammai. He thinks this is all Beit Hillel. He thinks the Homish is Beit Hillel, the Braita is Beit Hillel, and the Beit Hillel forbids Shvitat Kelim, and that's why you can't use the millstone on Shabbat. You can't have it running. So now we're going to have a question though. If you say that Beit Hillel holds Shvitat Kelim, so now we're going to go back to all the other cases. Why does Beit Hillel say all these other cases are okay? Gafrit umugmar. So now we're going to go through one by one. The Gafrit umugmar, my time ashavu. Why do we allow you to smoke to have this incense, the smell, or the sulfur cooking on Shabbat? If you can't do Shvitat Kelim, so how do you allow this? So they say mishum de lo ka'avid maaseh. There's actually, okay, so now we have to start making, like I said in the beginning, this isn't the most convincing. They're trying to make everything work together. So in order to do that, they're pushed into kind of giving answers that aren't necessarily the most convincing answers. So what could be the difference between the Gafrit and the Mugmar? Well, you're not actually doing an action. Okay, whereas look at the millstone. The millstone is constantly grinding. Here, it's just kind of adding smoke to the air, and then the smoke is getting to, right? It's more, you would say, indirect. There's not an actual act happening. What about the flax that's in the oven? There, it's being kind of singed in the oven. So again, mishum de lo avid maaseh. It's not really, right? It's just there's heat on it, but it's not really an action that's happening. Again, it's all a matter of how you determine action. This comes up all over Shas. How do you determine action? Like, I'll give you the best example. They say, Edim Zomimim, right? If you testify falsely, you're not supposed to get lashes because it's a lav she'ein bo maaseh. Now, why is it a lav she'ein bo maaseh, right? They say this is an exception to the rule. You do get lashes, but why isn't it a lav she'ein bo maaseh? But it's a lav she'ein bo maaseh because it's speech, it's not actions. Now, some people write speech is louder than, actions speak louder than words, but also people talk about the importance of speech and how speech is almost as if you did something. So, again, it's a matter of how you answer things. Sometimes some things are viewed as action, sometimes they're not. It depends. All over they're grappling with what exactly means an act. So you could say that this is not really like something's happening, right? If you think about the millstone working to grind, it's constantly doing something, whereas this maybe happens over time. It's not exactly a direct act. So that's what they explain. And not only that, lo abimaseh umein afnaicha. The other thing is that it's in a kli. So you might say, shvitat kelim, what's the difference? It's in an oven. Again, I'm not sure why this is a convincing answer, but since the oven is on the ground, right, whereas the millstone is kind of above the ground, for that reason, it's not viewed as the kli working. Again, these answers are not the most, there's issues with all these answers. So if you're not convinced, they're not convincing answers. Next one, mitzudat chayav ha'of dagim. What about the traps for the animals? Teka'avid ma'aseh. They are, right, how does a trap usually work? Right, something that the mouse walks into the trap and the contraption falls down on the mouse and catches the mouse. So there, something happens. My time asharu. Hatamnami belechi b'kukre delo ka'avid ma'aseh. There's different types of traps. The traps discussed here are traps like a net. Now, what happens when you walk into a net? You just kind of get trampled in the net, right? The animal gets caught in the net, but not that the net actually does anything. There's no act really happening. So therefore, again, going back to the earlier ones, which I said are not so convincing, maybe the issue is that when it comes to the millstone, it's constantly doing an act, right? Something's happening at every given moment. Whereas with the smoke, it's just kind of smoking up. Nothing new happens at any moment. Maybe you could explain it that way. Likewise with the flax in the oven. Whereas all these other things, something's actually happening at the moment. But here again, you can describe the nets, or nothing's actually happening. It's just it gets caught either in a hook, that's the lechi, or it gets caught like a fish in a hook, right? That's how we catch fish, or in a net. Okay, delo kavid mas. So now they say like this. Okay, so now this we have. Let's just go back. Rabba says this is Beit Hillel, and the reason why he forbids the rechaim is because of hashmat kol. According to Rav Yosef, it's Beit Hillel, but the reason he forbids is because of shvitat kelim, not because of hashmat kol. Why does he permit everything else? Well, he forbids shvitat kelim if there's a maaseh, and if it's not on the ground. But if it's on the ground and there's no maaseh, then it's okay. So now, this is not a very convincing answer, especially because we saw already that Beit Hillel doesn't hold by shvitat kelim, and that's what we're going to say now. But Rav Oshaya came and said in the name of Rav Asi that who's the Tana who holds shvitat kelim is d'oraita? Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai is the one who holds that. The lo Beit Hillel, and not Beit Hillel. Le Beit Shammai, bein ka'avid maseh, bein delo ka'avid maseh, asur. It has nothing to do with whether you did an act, you didn't do an act. According to Beit Shammai, your kelim have to rest on Shabbat. Le Beit Hillel, af agav de ka'avid maseh shari. And Beit Hillel don't care if you actually did a maseh, no matter what, it's allowed. And v'hashidam le Beit Shammai, af agav de lo avid maseh asur. So now we have to explain. So then, according to him, the rechaim must be Beit Shammai. If the rechaim is Beit Shammai, then the rest of the Braita is Beit Shammai. And now we're left to explain. So until now, we were assuming it was all Beit Hillel. Now we're left to explain, why does Beit Shammai say then, Ihachi mugmar v'gafrit, my time asharu Beit Shammai. So how did Beit Shammai permit all those things in the beginning of the Mishnah? We're now going to go through the mugmar and the gafrit, for example. So they say, hatam mana cha'ara. We're now going to say, well, your kli has to, right, your kli can't work. But in this case, there's no kli, right? There's just some smoke coming up, right? There's some fire underneath. There's smoke coming up, but there's actually no utensil. So because of that, the mugmar and the gafrit are just on the ground. They're not in a kli. Therefore, it's not an issue of shvitat kelim. That sounds convincing. However, the Gemara is now going to say it's clear to us that Beit Shammai hold in certain cases that even with the kli, it's going to be allowed. And therefore, how could that be? So what are the cases they bring? Gigit. Okay, it's going to be interesting to figure out how did they know Beit Shammai doesn't disagree in these cases. So what's a gigit? A gigit is where they would soak the barley for making beer. Now, how do we know the Beit Shammai allows this? The assumption is this process takes, Rashi says, more than 8 days. So if it takes more than 8 days, right, you don't put the barley in the, I don't know what they would soak it in, but you put the barley to soak, I guess in water, I don't know. You put the barley to soak. You would soak it for 7 days, right, 6 days, and then on Shabbat you take it out and then you put it back in, right? Nobody says that. You set up the beer to be ready and you leave it there. So over Shabbat it's clearly soaking. So what do you see? Beit Shammai must agree about that, even though it's in a kli. Next thing, ner. Everybody agrees we light candles before Shabbat starts. Beit Shammai don't ever say, oh, you can't light a candle, even though the candle continues to be lit throughout Shabbat. Ukdera, you put your pot on the fire before Shabbat, even though, right, you can leave it, right, there's all sorts of conditions. We'll get to this, but we're going to talk about this, and there's all sorts of conditions about how you can leave your food to cook up throughout Shabbat, but you can leave it, right, we put things in a crock pot, on a plata, even though it's going to continue on Shabbat. This shipud, right, there's a kli there, and shipud, also your shipud you can leave, and there, they say, because it's a Mishnah, and you tell them, I bet we're going to see it, and it seems to be not a problem. Beit Shammai doesn't come in there and say you can't do it. So they assume that Beit Shammai agrees in all these cases. So my time is Sharule Beit Shammai. Here we get a very interesting answer. Beit Shammai says in all those cases, you're mafkir. You say before Shabbat, I don't want this to be mine. And then it's no longer your kli. If it's no longer your kli, this sounds a little like mechirat chametz, right? Selling your chametz. You're saying, fictitiously, this isn't mine. Now, it's very strange to say that Beit Shammai only allows those things in a case, right? Did you ever light candles and think, oh, I'm going to say these candles aren't mine, right? Nobody does that. Obviously, we don't hold like Beit Shammai anyway, but would Beit Shammai really require everybody before Shabbat to say, this isn't mine, this isn't mine, this isn't mine, and that allows them to do it in those cases? So the Rashba has a good answer. He said, although it's also a strange answer to think that this works like this, but there's a concept in halacha that beitin, hefker, beitin, hefker. The beitin is allowed, the way that the beitin can make me pay up, let's say I don't pay, they can take my money and pay you back if I owe you money, and the beitin decides I owe you money, is because the beitin has rights to say, I can take, right, my property can be kind of taken by the beitin, and they could do what they want, but they could say this isn't yours anymore. So, because they have that power, and since we want to allow people to do these things on Shabbat, theoretically, the beitin, it's as if the beitin every week says, oh, for right now, this isn't yours. So again, it's a fictitious thing that allows us to be able to do these things. So that's how you would have to explain, according to Beit Shammai, all the exceptions to the rule. Okay, we finished with that braita. This was all that braita that we brought. Now we're going to bring another braita. Man tana lahaditani Rabbanan. Okay, who's the author of this braita? Lo timale isha k'dera asasiot v'turmasim v'taniach letoch hatanur. You can't, a woman can't fill up her pot with pounded wheat or legumes, like a type of, they're called lupines, and leave them in the oven, erev Shabbat im chashecha. Now, these were actions that people would do. I was thinking it's like when your phone is dead before Shabbat and you want to charge it over Shabbat, so that when Shabbat's over, you'll have your phone. So these are actions people would do before Shabbat for after Shabbat, okay? So that when Shabbat was over, it would be ready. This was something that took a long time to cook, so she would put it up in the oven before. Ve'im nitanan, and if she did it anyway, even though she's not allowed, lemotzei Shabbat asurim b'chdei sheyasu. You're not allowed to do this, and if you do, you have to wait until the amount of time it would take if you had started after Shabbat. This is how we penalize people for doing things they can't do on Shabbat. So if, for example, it's forbidden for me, it happens to be not forbidden, but let's say it was forbidden for me to put up my phone to charge on Shabbat, right? And as I put it up before Shabbat, for after Shabbat, I would have to wait, let's say my phone from dead till I can actually use it takes 5 minutes to charge. So I'd have to wait 5 minutes after Motzei Shabbat, and when Motzei Shabbat comes in, I would have to wait 5 minutes before I'd be able to use my phone. Okay, I could not benefit basically from what I had done. Next case, Lo yamaleh nachton. The baker can't fill a chavit shamayim, a big pot of water, v'yaniach letoch hatanur, erev Shabbat im chashecha. Can't put a big pot of water in the oven just before Shabbat to warm up so he can bake his bread immediately when Shabbat's over and have warm water. Again, if he does it, he would have to wait for the amount of time it would take him to heat it on Motzei Shabbat. So what can we assume this Mishnah must be? This Braita, Lema Beit Shammai. He sounds like Beit Shammai, below Beit Hillel, because Beit Hillel, and that's why I said we can put up our phone to charge over Shabbat, because it's not usher to do that as long as I do it before Shabbat starts. So now they say, right, Beit Shammai below Beit Hillel. So now the Gemara says, no, afilu tema Beit Hillel. Maybe it is Beit Hillel. But again, why are these exceptions? You'd have to say this is an exception to the rule. Why? Now this would not apply to my phone. Maybe I'll come to stoke the coals. Okay, this was always a concern. We're going to talk about this a lot on Shabbat, about Bishul, and it's going to come up in today's daf, which is that when people would cook things, they would often stoke the coals to get it to cook quicker. Let's say I put up my food before Shabbat and it's not ready for dinner, and I want it for dinner, so I start stoking the coals. So maybe there's a concern, so in all these cases, you can't put these things up before Shabbat because maybe you'll stoke the coals. So then they say, Ihachi, Mugmar v'gafrit nami ligzor. But remember, the mugmar and the gafrit, there's a fire under these things, and we're not worried you're going to stoke the coals. We said you can do that. So hatam lo machtilahu. So we're going to basically bring a number of questions against this. This is how we started. I said each time things are not going to be fully consistent. So we're going to try to get them to be consistent. What's the difference between the mugmar and the gafrit? Well, hatam lo machtilahu. We're not worried you're going to stoke the coals. Why? If you start stoking the coals, there's going to be a lot more smoke. Now, what do you want when you put this mugmar or gafrit? You want the smoke, or with the gafrit, you want the sulfur, but you don't want too much. If you have too much smoke, it's going to make your coals smell bad. So you don't want it to be too smoky, so therefore we're not worried you're going to stoke the coals. Inun shel pishtanami ligzor. Same thing with the flax. It's in the oven. Maybe you'll stoke the coals in the oven to get it to work quicker. So they say, no, Kevin, since wind is not good for the flax, you're not going to open the oven. If you open the door of the oven, the wind will come in and it'll destroy the flax. So therefore, we're not worried you're going to open the oven and stoke the coals. What about the pot with the wool inside? It's the pot of dye that's got the wool. Now, again, I said before, it's not clear, is it on the oven or not? We're on a fire. So now we're assuming it's on the fire. Amar Shmuel, b'yoreh akura. Oh, Shmuel says it must be. It was taken off the fire already, right? It doesn't need to be on the fire for you to dye. You need to put it on the fire first to create the dye. Once the dye is created, you take it off, and that's when you dye it off the flame. But there's still a concern. Maybe you're going to mix the pot. Now, what's the problem with mixing the pot? Okay, so Rashi says the problem is it's a problem of bishul. Let's say you have a hot soup. Let's say you have a soup that you made before Shabbat, and it's not actually cooked. It's not fully cooked. And you take it off the flame, even by mixing it, think about the soup is hot. When you mix it, it helps it cook better. So by mixing it, you might be over on bishul because you're doing an act that's actually causing it to cook. Once something's fully cooked, it's less of an issue, although many people actually don't spoon out the soup while it's on the platter for this reason, because you're not allowed to mix something that's on the platter. So now, maybe you'll come to mix it, and Rashi says the issue of bishul, even though it's off the flame, it's still hot, and you might actually come to cook it. Tosfot says no. The mixing has to do with the dye. Think about it. If you're dyeing something, when you mix it, right, not everything's getting the color on it, so while you're mixing it, you're actually causing it to be dyed. And therefore, it's the issue of coloring, tzvi'ah, and not the issue of bishul. Okay, we're going to see this all over Shabbat, that it's always going to, or many times going to be unclear which av malacha do things fall into, to which category. Here's a good example. So what do they answer? Ba'akura v'tocha. It's where it was taken off and you sealed it with cement or something like cement. You kind of sealed the cover. Therefore, we're not worried that you're actually going to come to mix it. Okay, so now we're going to say, since we said a bunch of things before, we're now going to come to halachic conclusions. Until now, we've been dealing with whose opinion is this, whose opinion is that. Again, going back to Safrai, who basically is saying that it's not necessarily that all these things are, one second, computer, okay. It's not necessarily that these things are going to cause issues. So, back to Safrai, it's not clear that everyone was consistent within their approach. However, the Gemara is trying to make these approaches consistent, therefore kept bringing brightas and said, who is this and why are there exceptions to the rule? Okay, now we're going to come to a bunch of halachic conclusions. Since we said that it's an issue that maybe you'll end up stoking the coals, so now we're going to talk about cooking actually. What kind of cooking is allowed? Assuming we hold like Beit Hillel, that you could put something on a flame before Shabbat and leave it to cook on Shabbat, well, it depends, because Beit Hillel himself is concerned you might stoke the coals. So when are we going to be concerned? Well, if you put up a pot of raw meat right before Shabbat, you clearly don't want that meat for dinner. Remember, in those days, back to bracha, right, they would eat very soon after Shabbat came in. So clearly you're not planning to eat that on Shabbat, and therefore you could leave it. So Shari Lanuche Erev Shabbat Mchashcha B'Tanura, my timer, Kevin de lo chazi le'orta, since it won't be ready tonight anyway, asuche mesach da'at himene, you clearly, it's like putting up a children. Nobody looks at their children Friday night. I know, sometimes people do, they like the smell, but normally you know it's going to cook all Shabbat. You're not worried, you only want it for tomorrow. Ubashil, let's say it's fully cooked already. Well then, shapir dame. Then of course it's fine because you're not going to stoke the coals to have it cook more. It's already cooked. Bashil below bashil usr. But if it's partially cooked, that's when we get into problems. Okay, there's a whole thing we're going to see later. Was partially cooked? How much does it have to be cooked in order for it to be considered cooked? Does cooked mean fully cooked, partially cooked? We'll get to that. But if it's partially raw, partially cooked, which we'll see the definition of it later, then we're going to say asir. Then it's forbidden because that's when we're concerned that maybe you're going to stoke the coals to get it to cook quicker before Shabbat comes in. Before you want to eat dinner. Okay. Next thing. Anything where the wind might get in the way, so you're not going to open the oven. Hi bisra degadia v'sharik shapir dame. If you have meat of a goat that's soft, okay, we're going to have different kinds of meat. There's meat that's soft, and if you seal the oven, clearly that's going to be fine. You're not going to stoke the coals because if you open the oven, the wind will get in. You don't want that, and the oven's sealed, so all the more so. Debar chavalo sharik. If the meat is harder meat, which won't get ruined by any wind, and you didn't seal it, then obviously usr. Then we're going to be concerned. Degad yivalo sharik or debarcha v'sharik. If it's soft, where the wind might affect it, but you didn't seal the oven, or if it's hard, where the wind won't affect it, but you didn't, but you sealed it. So that's the in between. We're going to see there's a machloket. Rav Ashi share, Rav Yirmiyah midifti asir. Rav Ashi permits. Rav Yirmiyah says it's asir. So now they say Rav Ashi deshare. Rav Ashi says this is fine. So what about the following Mishnah that we're going to get to soon? Ein solim basar batzalu beitza el kadesh yitzol mibod yom. You can't roast meat or an onion or an egg unless they're already fully roasted before Shabbat. So how do you explain that you can't do it if Rav Ashi says it's okay? So what did you answer? Again, if you look at the chart, it'll help you. You'll see what's asr, what's mutar. Hatam debar chavalo shari. That's a case where the meat was hard, and you're worried about the wind getting in, and you didn't seal it. In other words, if it has both those criteria, then even Rav Ashi would agree it's asr. Because then we're really concerned. In any other case, not. But Ikad Amrit, some people had a different version of the debate between them. And this is going to be more of a problem for Rav Ashi, because he's going to actually say, according to this, it's always allowed, as long as you have one criteria. So degadia, bein sharik, bein lo sharik, shapir dame. If it's soft, doesn't matter whether it's sealed or not sealed, it's going to be allowed, because we're not worried you're going to open the oven. Debarcha nami v'sharik, shapir dame. If it's hard and you sealed it, for sure it's okay, because you're not going to open it, because it's sealed. The only case they have a machloket is if the wind won't affect it and you didn't seal it, then Rav Ashi Shari, Rav Yirmiyah midifti asr. Even then Rav Ashi matchers it. So now they're going to say Rav Ashi Deshare. In this case, Rav Ashi matchered every case. So Hatznan ein solim basar batzalu beitzal kadesh yitzolim b'al yom. He allowed it. How could you say it's not allowed? So he says this must be a different case. Hatam bebisra agomre. It's things that were roasted on coals outside the oven. There we're worried because there's one thing if it's an oven that wasn't sealed. There we're not worried because it's in the oven. As soon as you go to the oven, you'll say, oh wait, I can't open the oven. But if the oven isn't sealed at all and it's just open, if the oven isn't closed, it's an open oven, it's like an open fire, then we're worried that you might come to stoke the coals or flip it or something like that. Amar Rabina, Hai Karachaya Shapir Dami, Keban de Kasha Lezika, Kebisra de Gad Yadami. Now we're going to say that if you have gourd that's raw, that also is going to be an issue. It's not going to be an issue because since the wind, if you open the oven, the wind will get to it and ruin it. Therefore, it's like the basar D, which is soft, and therefore we're not worried. So again, what did we do here? We basically, this is the Gemara getting very practical, right? It doesn't always get halacha lamasa into all the details, but what they want to give you here is, this case is like that, this case is like that, right? Once we made, and what this is really saying is, when we had all these questions and we gave answers, I think what they're trying to tell you is these answers have a lot of practical relevance. So you better be right about your answer. Sometimes someone pushes you into a corner and you give an answer. Well, now that they gave these answers, it was the wind, it was this, right? Once you say that, then it's going to have a lot of ramifications halachically. And that's what they're basically giving you, all the halachic ramifications. Okay, last source for today. We're now getting to the later part of the Mishnah about the non-Jew. Beit Shammai omrim ein mochrim, you can't sell things to a non-Jew because maybe people will think that he's doing something for you. Tanu Rabbanan, we're going to basically quote a Braita now. Beit Shammai אומרים, לא ימכור אדם חפצו לנוכרי, ולא ישילנו, ולא ילבנו, ולא ייתנו במתנה, אלא בכדי שיגיע לביתו. Okay, Beit Shammai is very machmir here. You can't sell anything to a non-Jew, or lend him something, or loan him, or I don't know what the difference between yashilenu and yilavenu. Yilavenu, I guess, is usually money, but I assume that's not what they mean here. Here, Rashi says, "Leishalenu she'elaz davar chozer be'ein halva'a." I see. The difference is, it's like a loan. A loan is something you give to someone and they won't return you that exact item. Whereas borrowing is they're borrowing and they're going to return that exact item. And you can't give him a gift unless he has enough time to get to his house before Shabbat, not to a nearby city, like it said in the Mishnah, but to his house. You have to just get to the first house in the city. Rabbi Akiva Omer, as long as he leaves your house, that's enough. Rabbi Akiva is the most mekel, and Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, hein divrei Rabbi Akiva, hein divrei Beit Hillel. He says Rabbi Akiva is in fact Beit Hillel. Now this is strange because Beit Hillel says you have to get to the Bayit HaSamuch La'ir, right? You have to get to the nearby city. And Rabbi Akiva says you just have to leave your house. He has to leave the Jew's house. So what do they answer? Lo ba Rabbi Akiva ela lefaresh divrei Beit Hillel. What Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says is that ignore, okay, this is interesting. It looks like it's a three-way machloket. Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, Rabbi Akiva. Now, normally you don't see Rabbi Akiva debating things with Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel. They're not from the same time period. What he's saying is Beit Hillel is coming, Rabbi Akiva is coming to disagree with the way the Mishnah, the Tanakh and the Mishnah explain Beit Hillel. The Mishnah says, or the opinion of the Tan in the Mishnah is that Beit Hillel said you have to get to the nearby city. And according to Rabbi Akiva, no, that's not what Beit Hillel thought. Beit Hillel said as long as he leaves your house, it's totally fine. Okay, and then that doesn't match the opinion in our Mishnah, because the opinion in our Mishnah said that Beit Hillel says as long as you get to the city, right? As what the wording was, you have to get to a nearby place. So Rabbi Akiva has a different approach about Beit Hillel and thinks that according to Beit Hillel, you can get to right. 1 second. Oh, sorry. In our Mishnah, sorry, my mistake. In our Mishnah, it was Beit Shammai who said Kadesh Yagia Lamakom Karov, and Beit Hillel were Mitirim. So now Rabbi Akiva is basically saying Beit Hillel is Mitirim as long as he leaves your house. Okay? And Beit Shammai, there's a difference of opinion about Beit Shammai, because the Braita here says that Beit Shammai says he needs to get actually to his own house. And according to our Mishnah, Beit Shammai said he has to get to Makom Karov. So again, you see more opinions about debates, not only between Shammai and Hillel themselves, but what exactly did they think is a subject of debate among different Tanaim. Okay, that's it for today. We'll meet up tomorrow on Shabbat Daf Yud Tet.